We live in a generation where busyness has become the new badge of honor. Busyness has become synonymous with production and productivity. It has become the image and validation of what it means to be someone who is dedicated to a job or a profession. Our schedules are filled to the brim, and it seems like we're always chasing the next thing on our to-do list. And in the process, we're all in a pursuit of happiness. But happiness is not a matter of intensity. It's not about how much we can get accomplished or how busy our schedules look, but rather it's a life of balance, order, rhythm, and harmony. So whether you're the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, a college student who's managing academics and friendships, or a stay-at-home parent, balance is key. For some, balance comes easy. It's almost natural. And for others, the failure to balance our lives can be the difference between success and failure as an individual, as an organization, and even as a family. And so as men, we are called to lead our families well. How can we ensure that we are prioritizing what's important? We put first things first, but still maintaining the balance and fulfilling all our other obligations. And here's a spoiler. It can be done, and it could be done well. So in today's episode, we're going to talk through the art of balancing work, life, ministry, and family. Let's go. Hey, what's up, family? Welcome to another episode of the Dad Different Podcast, episode number 2. Hey, we are rocking and rolling. We are all gas, no brakes for the year of 2024. So thank you for joining me once again. Hopefully you got a chance to listen or watch episode number 1. If not, I'll go ahead and link it right in the description, as well as all the other places that you can listen to it if YouTube is not your thing. And so thank you for joining me once again. And if it is your first time, my name is Jeffrey. I am the host of the Dad Different Podcast. In this podcast, we talk faith, family, and fatherhood, and really what it means to be men who are leading our families the best we can. Though we face struggles and challenges daily, it's about stepping up and being men who are committed to leading our families well. And my mission and vision is to inspire you to become a better version of yourself. And so wherever you may find yourself, I want to thank you for joining us today on the Dad Different Podcast. And hopefully this will bring great value to you. So once again, thank you for joining me today. So I want to get right into this one, waste no time. So I got my notes ready. You might see me looking down at my notes from time to time, but just know that you have my attention and that we're going to get through this thing together. And for those who are listening, thanks again for tuning in. So got my notes. Hope y'all ready. And let's get into this episode. Starting off on a personal note, this year for me has sort of sparked this interest and pursuit in becoming an effective person, an effective parent, an effective husband, an effective leader. All areas of my life, I want to become effective. And currently, I'm reading a well-known book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And it's been such a great resource as I take on this personal journey. And one of the themes throughout the book is that, to be effective and successful in any role you play, whether that be a CEO, as you mentioned, a parent, a coach, a pastor, a teacher, a leader, a business person, you must understand that true effectiveness requires balance. We have to learn how to balance our lives. You'll never be able to pour from an empty cup because you simply can't give what you don't have. That's what we're after, right? We want to be leaders who lead well and are effective. I want to be an effective father to my children. I want to be an effective spouse to my wife. I want to be an effective leader to those who have been entrusted to me. And to do that, I must learn how to balance. And so I'm on this journey, how to be effective, how to be able to give my all while still maintaining healthy habits. And I've learned that there's a big difference between balancing and juggling. You see, when you juggle, you're having to let things go at any given time in order to make room and space for that other thing, right? I'm a visual person, so allow me to paint you this picture. So imagine in this hand, those who are watching, I have ball number one, and that represents my family. And in the other hand, I have balls number 2 and 3 or 4, which represent work, life, ministry, insert whatever it is that you have in your hands. And so juggling all these things might be sustainable for a season. I might say to myself that I got this. I got this. This is not easy. This is very easy. And so what happens is it's only sustainable for a season. But ultimately, at any given time, one of those things are going to require more of your attention over the other, right? Let's say busy quarter at work. Well, maybe you got to toss up the family ball and hope that things come and fall into place, that, the home is still intact and your children are still, behaving and doing all those good things. And let's say you have a new baby, a new addition to the family. Well, maybe you have to toss up the work ball, and now you're hoping that you can still make deadlines in meetings and be a responsible person that can be called upon. And so over time, things are going to require our attention. That's going to need us to juggle all these things. So if you're not a good juggler like myself, you might find yourself in a predicament where you're putting things that are not important in a particular season above things that are supposed to be important. And we oftentimes find ways to justify that. We oftentimes find ways to justify our attention to that one thing over the other. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we get more into the episode. So I hope you kind of got that picture of what it means to juggle in your mind. Now, let's visualize what balance looks like, what a life of balance looks like. So unlike a juggling act, balancing becomes more of an exercise of order, rhythm, and harmony, like we mentioned in the intro. We understand the key to success is to put first things first and nurture the things that are most important. And I'll say that one more time. We understand that the key to success in all areas of life, family, ministry, work, is to put first things first and to nurture the things that are most important. So when the busy quarter comes in at work, we open up the lines of communication to our spouse. We let them know that this season might look a little bit different, but communication has become priority. And when the new addition comes into the family, that line of communication is open to our bosses, is open to our coworkers and our colleagues. And we let them know that this season might look different, will look different. And so we communicate, we become proactive, and we communicate in an effort to balance all these things that are happening. And when done well, instead of finding ourselves cleaning up the mess, we know that we've prepared ourselves to be successful in those areas. So in this episode, I want to break down the balance of work, ministry, life, and family, and how we can get those working together to be an interwoven relationship of balance, order, rhythm, and harmony. So wherever you find yourself, I think we can all agree, and I think we can all benefit from a life that is well balanced. And maybe you're listening and your work is full-time ministry. Maybe you're a pastor. Maybe you serve in a different capacity in church leadership. And maybe that's what you do. That is your work. And so maybe you're just having to balance life, family, ministry. How do you balance the other two, right? And I'll say before we get further that unfortunately I've seen this done at the expense of one's family, where ministry was put before the family. But here at That Different, one of my missions and goals is to inspire men to do things differently, to really put the first things first in the things that matter the most. We're all about doing things differently, changing the narrative and the paradigms that we are used to. As we continue, as the CEO or an executive of a company, how do you balance work, life, and family? Do you often find yourself juggling and losing focus on what matters most because you're having to throw things in the air to cater to something else, and hopefully that thing comes down in peace? Remember, our busyness does not equate to productivity or production. Busyness does not equate to productivity or production. Effective and successful leaders understand that true effectiveness requires balance. Successful parents understand that true effectiveness requires balance. Ministries that are successful understand that true effectiveness and efficiency requires balance. Many people seem to hold the thought that success in one area of life can compensate for failures in other areas of life. I'm going to say that one more time. Many people often think that success in one area of life can compensate for failure in other areas of life. I believe that if you succeeded in everything that you've set out to accomplish and lose your family in the process, that is not success. That is failure. What can compensate for this? Nothing. Can the compensation monetarily of a highly paid CEO or executive make up for a broken marriage, children who barely see their father because he's always working and don't have time because he's providing? Or in the end, can it compensate for the decline of your health because you were so focused or too busy chasing that dream? So we're going to dive into work, ministry, family, and some of the ways that we can be successful in those areas. And we're going to bring those together. And I'm going to give you 5 things that you can do right now to lead your family well in each of those areas. So let's look at work. Without a doubt, we know that as men, we are called to be providers. This is a guiding principle in what true biblical manhood is. It's a guiding principle in what we ought to be doing as men. So we've been mandated, we've been called to provide. That's what we should do. And as a matter of fact, in the Bible, in 1 Timothy chapter 5, verse 8, it says this. It says, if anyone fails to provide for his own, and especially for those of his own family, he has denied the faith by disregarding its precepts and is worse than an unbeliever who fulfills his obligation in these matters. So we know that we ought to provide for our families. So we certainly see that the call to provide and the weight that it carries. So we know that in the midst of attempting to balance our life, work will always play a part of this equation. Work will always be one of the balls that we need to ensure that we're balancing, not just simply juggling, but balancing well if we want to be effective in our leadership to our families, if we want to be effective parents, if we want to be effective leaders, ministry leaders, whatever it is, we must learn to balance that well. But here is where at times I believe that we as men can kind of get the lines crossed or misread the message. Sometimes our identity is found in the work that we do. Our identity should not be found in the work that we do. Our identity should not be found in our work. Yes, we're called to work, but ultimately it is not who we are. If your identity, for a moment, let's think, if your identity is tied so deeply in what you do, your career or your profession, your ministry, whatever, the thing that is tied to your income, then what happens when things that are out of your control happens, when layoffs happen, when you get passed up for a promotion, when you're away from work, are you truly away from the work, or have you become a slave to the work? Here's a question for you, and this is something that I've been pondering from time to time, is when was the last time someone asked you who you are and you didn't answer with a title or a profession? I want you to think. When was the last time that somebody asked you, who are you, that you did not answer with a title or your profession or the thing that is tied to what you provide your family with? And I'm guilty of this as well. We often consciously and subconsciously, knowingly or unknowingly, tie our identity to what it is that we do. And what if the next time, a little exercise for you, what if the next time you're asked that question and you answer that you're a father first, that you're a husband, that you're a brother, right? That you're happy, something other than that thing that brings in money for your family. I believe that not only will that take the other person by surprise, but that might even open up some great conversations, deeper conversations that are not tied to how busy we are, that are not tied to how full our schedules are. Yes, we are called to work. We are called to provide, but we are much more to our families than that. And maybe you're in a season of juggling where you have to work more than usual to provide. That is an honorable thing. That is a commendable thing. But we know that our identities should not be tied to our work. See, I remember a season where my wife and I were working, and we'd only see each other for a few hours in the morning, and I'd go to work and come home at night, and I'd see my children a little bit less because I'd be at work throughout the whole day, and by the time I get home, they'd already be in bed. And so that was a season. That was a season my wife and I went through, and lines of communication were opened, and my wife and I understood that it wouldn't always be this way. And so we have to open up lines of communication. We have to understand that though we find ourselves in a season of juggling, we must always come to a place of balance, of rhythm, of order, and of harmony. Now, I don't want to move on to the next point with the idea of me painting a bad picture of a man who works to provide for his family. As I mentioned, that's an honorable thing to do, but we must remember that at the end of the day, that our identity is not in what we do. So hopefully that was valuable. We're going to move on to ministry. Let's address ministry. So for those who find themselves where work is ministry or ministry is work, let's address some things. My wife and I, we welcomed our 6th child back in November, and we are so grateful that we serve at our local church that allows us to rest and be present in the home. And so if you're in ministry in whatever capacity, as a pastor, as a church leader, as a volunteer, as an elder, however you serve at your local church, hopefully you know by now that your family is your first ministry. See, the Bible speaks of shepherding the flock among you in the context of elders of the church, but I believe that if you're a husband and have children of your own, then that flock lives with you. That flock comes home with you, or you come home to that flock every single day. See, you are among that flock day in and day out, and it is your responsibility to ensure that they are not only receiving what they need physically, but also spiritually, right? Through God's word. You are the priest of your home. We are the priests of our home. It begins at home first. And as I mentioned earlier, I unfortunately saw firsthand where this wasn't the case, that there would be men who would put the ministry, the work of the church before their families. And what I've learned from that is, one, that's something that I don't want to do. And also that is something that we're not called to do. But I've learned that real love is sacrificial. It puts the others before ourselves. It puts others before ourselves. And in the context of marriage and family, we ought to put those entrusted to us first, not those outside of the home, but those in the home. One way to put your spouse and family first is to communicate any ministry request with them first. Let them know that you have been called upon for this or that, and see where it falls in the schedule. Can it work with everybody? Does it work with everybody? Can we all leave a place where it's a win-win for everybody, not a win for you and a loss for your family? And I know sometimes, being raised in church and having done ministry for a long time, I often, jump at the first ask of a ministry request. But I know that taking the time and moment to speak with my wife will do us good, will do me good in the future. So remember that the most important thing is family is ministry. Family is your first ministry. It's very, very easy to put family on the back burner and let moments slip by that turn into days, weeks, months, or even years. And if we're not sacrificing ourselves for and serving our family, we will not be as effective in any other area of ministry or life. I'm going to say that one more time, that if we're not sacrificing ourselves in serving our families, we will not be effective in any other area of ministry or life. So whether you're looking for a better ministry life balance, better work ministry life balance, whatever that balance is for you, or wondering just how to lead your family spiritually, or strengthening those relationships at home with your children or with your spouse, a great place to start is really recognizing and understanding that your family is indeed your first ministry. We minister to them first with the sacrifices of our time. We minister to them first with the sacrifice of the love that we give them. I often say this: don't be a public success in the eyes of the church, in the eyes of corporate America, and have your family living a completely different reality at home. Don't be a public success in the eyes of the church in corporate America and have your family living a completely different reality at home. We as men, we often overextend ourselves for years, right? Throughout life, throughout work, throughout ministry, building ministries, building careers at the expense of our marriage or relationships with our children. We get so busy chasing this thing, that thing, success, ministry, the next opportunity, climbing that ladder, only to realize that that ladder was leaning on the wrong building the entire time. And you might have heard that one before. And we bitterly wish that we can turn back the hands of time to do things differently. You should be thankful that you're in a place that you're able to realize, that you're able to learn from the mistakes of others so that you don't have to repeat those same mistakes as others did with their families. And now we're moving on to our final point, which is the family. Now, I know that the family dynamic is different from family to family, household to household. What works in one house may not necessarily work in another. What works in mine probably won't work in yours. But there's one thing that remains the same throughout, and that's the love and attention that our families need from us. That's the love and attention that our families need from us. See, I've learned in the eyes of my wife and my children that love is often spelled Time. That's time. Love is spelled time in their eyes. The time that is spent with them is an everlasting investment. That's something that you can never regret that you spent on. That's something that you can never regret that you wish you had back, is the time that you spent with them. See, these are deposits that will in the future allow you to withdraw from when they're older, when they're looking for advice, when they're looking for a shelter, a place of peace. They know that they can come back to mom and dad. They know that they can come back into the home because there was a great investment that was done when they were kids. And so I often say, I don't have to worry if my kids will remember if I was present or around, because I know that I'm making the sacrifice, that I'm making the time, being intentional to spend that time with them in the tender young ages that they are. So there will always be something that is fighting for your time. There's always going to be a project. There's always going to be a ministry request. There's always going to be something that is fighting for your time, your energy, and your resources. And oftentimes, we make space for the unimportant, non-urgent things in our lives while neglecting those that are important, while neglecting to nurture the things that we have to. We often say, we don't have time for this or that. But what I've learned is that if something is important to you, you're going to make time for it. If something is important to you, you're going to find the time. And so let's learn to sacrifice for the sake of our children. I feel like sacrifice has become a bad word in our society, that there's not anybody who's willing to sacrifice anything anymore. And in our generation, in the overall virality of the society that we live in, I feel like sacrifice just isn't there. Everybody wants to go from this all the way up to the next level with no sacrifice in between. But really, what is worth it will require your sacrifice, and love will require sacrifice. So sacrifice watching that game to play with your children. Sacrifice going to the golf course to attend a recital or a basketball game. Say no to that engagement because your family is bigger. Your family is a bigger priority in this season. And remember that a no here will always be a yes somewhere else. And a yes here will always be a no somewhere else. It may require us to be a little bit more emotionally present than we physically are. And I know that for me, that's something that I struggled with. And that's something that I've worked to overcome, is to be not only physically present, but emotionally present as well. Commit to being fully present at home. What does that mean? Set the phone down. Start there. Set the phone down during any and all interactions with your spouse and your children. Especially around a dinner table, put the phone down. Take those non-urgent and unimportant calls at a later time. Let them know that you're finishing work, your children, that is, your spouse. Let them know when you're finishing work so that they can expect you, so that they can be excited to see you. Spend some time playing with your kids. There's something special that I found about just being on their level, just getting down on the floor and just playing with them, meeting them where they are rather than having them come up to us. There's really something special about that. Remember that in their eyes, love is spelled Time. So we ought to be committed to leading our families well. And one great way to do that is by giving them our time. And in the midst of all that, there's this thing called life. There's aspects of it that we can control, and there's aspects of it that are out of our control. So then how can we balance all things into something that has order, rhythm, and harmony? So as we conclude, as promised, I want to leave with you 5 things that you can do right now, today, after listening to this podcast, not only to level up your leadership, but how you can better serve your family and find a balance between work, life, ministry, and family. Number 1, first thing is to prioritize. Effective people prioritize. Successful people prioritize. Getting your priorities in order is key to leading your family well. It's key to leading an organization well. It's key to leading a ministry well, and finding balance between many roles that you play. Begin to understand the importance of finding those things that are just not adding value to you or your family. Along the way, you learn that effectively, as we mentioned, a yes here is a no to something else, and a no here is a yes to something else. And in the process, you learn that you will know exactly where you need to be, where your energy can be spent when you prioritize better. See, the better you can prioritize the things you have to do, the better you can focus your efforts on the things that matter most. And in the context of Dad Different, that's family. That's raising and leading our families the best we can. And that begins with prioritization. So without clear priorities, you'll end up spending a significant amount of time and energy and resources on unimportant tasks. Second is communication. Communication at its core is fundamental of any relationship. Whether you're a CEO, a pastor, a coach, or a parent, this is fundamental. Communication has to be there. Earlier in the episode, we talked about opening up the lines of communication in seasons where it is going to be the difference between success and failure, the difference between keeping your family in order. So opening up the lines of communication is key. Leading well means communicating well. Naturally, see, your family is looking for you to lead, right? And this also means communicating vision, communicating dreams and goals that you have for the family. Communicate to them where you see yourselves as a unit, as a family. Just like a CEO will bring down vision, just like a pastor will bring down vision, you then have to communicate that vision. Communicate to your spouse anything that is outside of your normal obligations. Communicate those ministry requests. Communicate those business trips that pop up and that you need to attend to, all to communicate and to keep things held together properly. And like I said earlier, if ministry is your work, you have to communicate those ministry requests to your family. You have to put them first. You have to see how things will end up in a win-win situation and not simply a win-lose for your family. Third, and this one is one that we all can work on a little bit more, is to listen actively. Easier said than done. But what happens is when we really get to listen, when we really listen actively, listen to learn, it gives us an opportunity to find out a little bit more, learn a little bit more about those who have been entrusted to us. We can find out the temperature of our families, how things are going, by simply listening, by taking the time to listen to our kids, by taking the time to really understand what it is that they're going through so that we can better navigate them through the seasons that they're going through. And if you're too busy talking to be heard instead of listening to understand, you leave your family feeling the weight of someone who is just bulldozing their way through life. They're just dictating their way through the relationship. And so take the time to listen and to listen well. Listen to understand, listen to learn, and not just listen to be heard or to make a point. Number 4 is to be present. Dad Different. Be present, be different. Our mission as men is we ought to work hard at being present. And sometimes being physically present is easy because we tell ourselves we're here. We're in the home. We're physically present, but sometimes emotionally present is where most men can use the work, present company included. I used to be physically present, but emotionally sometimes I was just not here. And so that's something that I've worked on very hard to ensure that I'm physically present, not only physically present, but emotionally present as well for my family. And that goes back to what we said earlier, love being spelled time, love with your time. Don't forsake the important for every unimportant matter that arises. Don't chase urgency. Don't chase that to-do list. Don't chase that task list. Turn off that phone, answer that email later, and be present. Trade in the busyness for an investment into your family. Trade in that busyness for an investment into your family. And number 5, empower those around you. As leaders, we're called to empower. We're called to build those up around us. We're called to leave people better than we met them. I often call that the Jesus leadership method, to leave people better than we met them. Don't forget to steward well what's been given to you. You've been entrusted with a spouse. You've been entrusted with children. Don't forget to steward that well. Remember that the idea of shepherd the flock that is among you. Shepherd those that are among you. Shepherd them well, spiritually, physically. They're with you every day. They're counting on you to provide, not only physically, but spiritually as well. We can learn to cultivate our children to grow into their purpose. We can cultivate them to grow into the call that is upon their life, teaching them to be strong thinkers, independent thinkers, become effective just as we are on a journey to become effective. And so with that effectiveness as a leader, you will see and you will bring out the greatness in those who have been entrusted to you. And all of this can't be done if we ourselves are not effective. All this cannot be done if we ourselves are not effective. And in other words, it could all be done if we're effective. And to be effective, we must learn to balance, not juggle. And so I'll leave you with a personal mission statement of mine, and that is to succeed at home first. Be successful in the house first. And I believe that when we're successful in the house, every relationship, every obligation, every commitment that we take on outside of the home will be a lot more fruitful, will be a lot more pleasing when we are successful first in the house. You see, my family deserves me at my best, and so do yours. So succeed at home first, and you are well on your way to becoming a better father, better husband, and a better leader. All right, fam, thank you so much for checking out episode number 2 of the Dad Different podcast, the art of balancing work, life, ministry, and family. I want to thank you once again for giving me your time and your support. I'd really love it if you went ahead and like, subscribe, and share this episode and this podcast if you got any value out of it whatsoever. And for those who are not on YouTube, you can find the Dad Different podcast on Apple Podcast as well as Spotify and anywhere else that you may listen to your podcast. And while you're there, don't forget to leave a like or a rating or a review if you can. That will really help us out a lot as we grow this community and as we provide value to others out there. And so until next time, I am Jeffrey, the host of the Dad Different podcast, and I will catch you guys here on another episode.